Hey everyone, so today I'll be showing you how to convert your Babyhawk 2 HD into an analog system. This video is for those who are like me and are waiting for their DJI FPV goggles. As you know, they are really quite hard to find in the current situation. Or maybe you just want an analog version of the Babyhawk 2, as Emax doesn't currently make an analog version of this. So what you want to do first is remove the 7 top plate screws. And when you get the top plate off, you'll also want to remove these 2 little screws from the antenna holder, as well as this antenna securing screw on the Vista as well. Once you have removed all the antenna securing screws, you simply pop out this plastic part from the main stalk of the antenna, like so, and then remove the antenna from the Vista. Pop this out, pop the IPEX connector holder out, and then just pop it off. And now the antenna can be slide out from the top plate. Now after all that's done, I like to remove the FPV camera screws first, just so that I can get all of the equipment out of the way before doing the soldering. And once the camera is off, you can start desoldering all the wires connecting the Vista to the flight controller. Just go in and out, don't stay on the pads for too long, otherwise you'll break the pads. And that's it. I like to take off this connector as well, because I'll be directly soldering my receiver to the flight controller as well. So here we have the AIO. This AIO actually has everything that we need for the conversion. We have 2 UARTs. UART1 is here with the RX and the TX, and UART2 is here with the RX and the TX. Make sure you don't get the pins mixed up, because the silk screen is actually pretty confusing. So from left to right we have TX, RX, ground, 5 volts and S-bus. So for those who are running S-bus, you can connect your S-bus signal straight to this pin. For crossfire, you'll use the TX and RX pins for the receiver, and for the F port you'll just use this TX pin right here along with the 5 volts and ground. For VTX, the AIO actually has a VTX pad, so solder this straight to your video in of the VTX, and there's a 5 volts and ground to power your VTX as well. Or alternatively, you can just use the VCC and the ground pads to power your VTX directly, but do make sure that your VTX can take the voltage input. For the camera, the pads are at the top here. So we have the camera pad, which is to connect your video output to the pad. We have 5 volts and ground also to power the camera, but you can also use the VCC and ground to power directly from the battery as well. There is also a 3.3 volt pad for those who are using Spectrum, which takes 3.3 volts, and also there's a buzzer pad, as well as an LED pad for if you want to use a buzzer or maybe wire up some LEDs. So for the VTX, I'll be using this Ishin Nano VTX. It goes all the way up to 200 milliwatts and it's quite cheap. I really like this VTX. The video is actually quite clean. So I'll be wiring up the VTX first. I'll just pre-tin the pads, ground, 5 volts, and the VTX. And I've already pre-tinned all of my wires. Now the video, which is the yellow wire, will go to the VTX pad. Red is 5 volts, so you go to the 5 volt pad, and the ground will go to ground. The pads are quite small, so make sure you don't bridge any of the pads like I just did there. You can go back again to fix that, and make sure you don't bridge the gaps. I'll test it out with a multimeter after I'm done. And this VTX supports the tramp protocol, so I'll be connecting the wire to the TX pin on the AIO. For the camera, I'll be using this old Runcam Micro Sparrow. It's an okay camera. It'll have to do for when the DJI goggles turn up. So I'll just pre-tin the pads. I guess I didn't need to do the 5 volts and ground pads because I'll be running the camera off the battery. So connect the signal, and then the power to power, and then the ground to ground. And then you simply plug the wire harness back in and screw in the camera as it did before. Now for the receiver, I'm using an XM Plus, so I'll be soldering the signal wire straight to the S bus pad, and then the power to 5 volts, and the ground to the ground pad. Okay, now that all the soldering is done, I'll be mounting the VTX and the receiver onto the board using some of this thick double-sided tape. There's so much space in the frame that you can just plop them down anywhere that you like. So I guess the receiver, I'll just plop it here, and then the VTX, I'll plop it down here. There's so much, as I said, there's so much space in the frame that you don't need to worry about space. Also, don't forget to put on the antenna onto the VTX. And I'm sure you've heard this a million times already, but never power on the VTX without an antenna, otherwise you'll fry it. And now for the final stretch, and the top plate can be put back on. But there is one catch though, because they used really short standoffs at the back for the height of the Caddx Vista. There will be a gap without any standoffs, but the screws will be long enough to pull it down. It is not ideal. I recommend to get some 22 mil M2 standoffs for the back as well. So here we are, a converted analog version of the Babyhawk 2. For the back, I've 3D printed out of TPU some standoffs for the time being, while I wait for the DJI goggles. And now head into the computer. Okay, now that we are in beta flight, the first thing that we're going to do is to go into the ports tab and turn off the UART1 for MSP. And we're going to select whichever protocol that your VTX supports. In this case, it'll be the IRC tramp for the Ishi Nano VTX. Save and reboot. And we're going to go into the configuration tab next to set the receiver protocol. And we can see it's already set to SBus, but you need to pick whichever one your receiver supports. And now in the PID tuning tab, I'm going to leave everything as it is because apparently the tune on the Babyhawk 2 is pretty good already. So I'm just going to change the rates to my own rates and we'll go from there. Alright, now all the rates are entered. Hit save and we'll head to the receivers tab. Now the flight controller doesn't provide 5 volts out to the receivers, so we'll need to plug in a battery for this step. Please make sure that all your props are off, just in case of a flyaway. And we'll plug the battery in. Now in the receivers tab, you want everything, all your channels to work. As you can see here, if your channel map doesn't look correct, you can set your channel mapping here to whichever one your receiver is outputting. In my case, is AATR 1234. You can just trial and error all of these to make sure that the channel mapping is correct. Hit save, and we're on to the modes tab. In the modes tab, you want to set up all your flight modes to your liking. The defaults may not work for everyone. I've already set mine up here. And now we're going to go into the OSD tab. It's the same thing here, just set all your OSDs to your liking. Now, I'm using an NTSC camera, so I'm going to set the video format to NTSC. And as you can see here, you want to make sure your OSD elements are not being cropped out. Hit save once more, and you want to go into the video transmitters tab to set your VTX mapping. The VTX mapping is different for every single VTX. You can find the mapping for your specific VTX online, and you can just copy the commands into the CLI tab. Hit enter and the flight controller should reboot itself and the VTX table should be set up, as you can see here. And that's it. We are done setting it up in beta flight. And there you have it, a converted analog version of the Babyhawk 2. You can see that I've tidied up the antennas here. You can really mount the antennas anywhere you like. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.